Western. That's what I heard,
Yeah.
But then when we went to Trader Joe's yesterday, and that's when you really see like, okay, this is like the suburbs, you can see
Right.
the more houses here, a small subdivision there, Costco there, it's basically
Yeah.
what you do every day, So today we're gonna go to, which one is it? One of the lakes,
Like Watson
Links
Lake
Lake?
or?
is it Lake Watson or?
Watson Lake, yeah.
Watson Lake, or there's another one Watson Lake.
Well, there's 5 lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't swim in any of them, right?
You could swim in 2 of them,
Oh, really?
but not. I mean, I wouldn't swim now.
No,
but,
not now, but,
There's 2 of them you could swim in: Lynx Lake and
Lynx Lake, okay.
Granite Basin Lake.
okay, so those two, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lynx Lake is right over by Costco. It's a great area. I love
Okay.
that. Watson Lake is over, I live right by there.
Right.
And, then there's Gold Lake?
Goldwater. We went
Goldwater,
yesterday.
Willow Lake.
We went to yesterday to Goldwater. We did a 2-mile
Yeah.
round. It's really nice,
It really is beautiful here.
Yeah.
It's kind of gorgeous, actually.
It really is, and geographically, Phoenix.
My wife has 2 kids who come to that, and I know of 4 kids who could. Like 2 don't, 2 do. Like depending on their affiliation.
Right.
So things are small, but they're like very family oriented. Very,
You have children?
Yeah, once our girl is 13, she had her bar mitzvah last year. We went to Israel, and our son is 11, so he'll be in June of 2025. We'll have his bar mitzvah there. What we're probably going to do is have his there with Rabbi Kagan, and then if we do end up moving, we'll move here to here, either here or Phoenix, one of the two.
cool.
But if we end up moving, we'll want either here or Phoenix. But yeah, so, and we're planning in December of 2025 to go with my wife's brother. His son is also born mitzvah, so they want to do something in the desert, like we did our daughters in the desert.
In Israel.
Yeah, in the Arava desert, and they really like that. So obviously in the summer we can't do that because it's too hot. But yeah, so we'll see.
Cool.
I mean,
Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's Prescott's a nice town. It's unique, I think, in a lot of ways. Phoenix is also interesting. It's like big city, but it's also kind of an unusual big city. It's like
yeah, that's why I found that it's like even because we have properties in 3 different areas of Phoenix, getting service contracts. Oh no, that's West Phoenix. I'm not going there. Or that's East Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. So it seems like most people stick to a certain geographical area and they just don't.
yeah, well, it's like super spread out. So,
Well, that's why, and so they stay in this corner or in that corner,
Yeah.
or that corner. So
Have you spent time in Phoenix?
I have, yeah, I have. We went last year for a week to really see the area and everything. We liked it. I was trying to get my brother-in-law to move also because our kids are very, very close.
You like warm weather?
That's why we're looking at this because it's less than.
Beersheba,
Yeah, my wife is from Sde Yaakov, so it's kibbutz in the north. It's in the Bet Shan Valley. It can get up to 120 degrees there in the summer.
That should be very comfortable in Phoenix.
Right? I wouldn't. I grew up in San Diego, so when we were looking at Phoenix, we're looking more like in the northern part, kind of Anthem, New River. That's a little bit higher elevation and not in the valley. So that's kind of like one option there. But ideally, I would love here just because of the elevation, just the nature of the small town,
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast between Phoenix, Prescott,
Yeah,
and Flex.
and Flagstaff, yeah.
Have you spent time in Flex?
Oh yeah. We were there 2 years ago because that's originally what we thought of going to, but I don't know. We stayed near downtown and we saw it very like Bohemia style, very like just weird people there and just the whole feel.
well, it's different. It's bigger city.
Yeah,
And it's a university town.
It's
So
yeah,
there's-
exactly. We saw either very young college kids or like older hippie type,
Be
Which
careful now, be careful.
What's that?
Talking about older people.
Oh, gotcha. No, but it was nice. It was it was really, really beautiful town, I don't know. I don't know. It seemed a little bit.
Got to study a little bit.
Okay.
Study every day. Yeah,
Very
welcome. Feel free to call me. I could answer your questions.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Where do, if there's families here, where do if there's families here, where do most of the families live?
We have lots of charities.
It's really interesting. So we're in this area. I chose this area because I wanted people to give people an opportunity to walk. Like there's not really walking distance.
Right.
There is no area. It's like people spread around.
Spread around.
Yeah, there is no specific area where people live.
Okay.
It's Prescott is so one thing about Prescott that's different than Flagstaff or whatever is it's extremely spread out. It's
Okay.
like if you look at the map, it's kind of like you have this central area, this area here,
Right.
and then you have like neighborhood, all around.
Right.
It's not like you have the city and then like it just keeps going with houses.
Right.
Which is nice. Like if you look that way, you'll see fields and mountains. You look that way, every direction there's like a space of mountains in between.
That's what we really like.
So there isn't really an area where families live. Prescott's more communal than Prescott Valley. Like if you live in Prescott Valley, less chances you'll know your neighbors. Kind
Really?
of like that. Yeah, it's more like industrious. Like a lot of younger families move to Prescott Valley, but like it's kind of like there's less culture there. There's less like community feel. So it's
Okay.
kind of like people live in their house, they go to work. They're trying to change that in Prescott Valley. They're trying to make it more like they just invested tons of money in their downtown, which has not much going in it.
Oh, Prescott has its own little downtown.
Yeah, it does not much going there, but they're trying to. Like they built 600 apartments there, to make it,
Wow.
But there's not really an area like,
Mm.
Ezra lives in one area. Well, that's another thing. It's like the area Ezra lives in is very different than the area that he lives in, very
Yeah.
different than we live in. This is like city area.
Right.
This area surprisingly is very expensive, but it's like older and everything. But I want it to be central. So
Right,
that
right.
was the cost of it. Ezra lives a little bit in the mountains that way. There's woods that way, forest that way.
Mhm.
There's desert is that way. Prescott Valley is more
Right.
desert. In between, you have high desert, which is like a little bit naturey, but it's like and so there's actually 4 or 5 very different landscapes that people live in here.
Wow.
So that's the
Like between here and Prescott Valley, we saw like where the Costco is and Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
We saw a few neighborhoods there.
Yeah.
That like one of them is a subdivision and the other one is kind of like somewhat nature, but still.
well
you feel-
most things are subdivisions. Not all are, but most things are subdivision. But there's different layers. Like let's say next to Costco, Yavapai Hills is a subdivision, but like they're less strict in the HOAs there than other places. Then across you have the ranch. You have some homes which are not a subdivision there, and then you have the ranch, which is much more independent. And then you have you do have different that way. In the woods, you have several subdivisions. Some of them are like gated, and some of them are kind of like very open. Like some of them, the streets are owned by the subdivision. Some of them, the streets are owned by the city. It's the way, the different nature of them.
Right.
There are, I actually have a pretty good hold on most subdivisions and everything. I looked into a lot of places when I moved, so I was trying to find a place where you could park on the street. It was difficult, but most subdivisions were not fit for a Chabad.
Right.
And also, it's like a 10-minute drive between every subdivision. Like you kind of have to go out. There's like a drive, and then you come to the next one.
Yeah.
Ezra doesn't really live in a subdivision, but it might be. He lives in what's called Williamson Valley.
Okay.
So that's 10-15 minutes that way. It's kind of ranch style.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different styles. I mean, I don't know where you are, but like you might be in Timmeridge, Hassayampa Village. Those are up that way. They're in the woods. You
Okay.
feel like you're in the woods, and then it kind of changes from houses into cabins at a
Okay.
certain point. Yeah.
Where we are right now, we're staying in the cabin.
Yeah. So that's you're probably in that area.
Yeah.
You might be Groom Creek, or those are different areas there. Some of them, so that's kind of the nature of it. I mean, it's hard to.
No, I mean, as far as what we've seen here,
Yeah.
I mean, really nice people.
Yeah. So
You
it's
can tell, like, most of them are, retired or somewhat active still, but I love, I love
well.
that.
The statistics wise.
Ironically,
Yeah.
they're very friendly.
Very, and they're older, and which I like.
Not always
Not old, well, not older, like,
There is an older population here.
No, I know, like, 55, 65, people,
So-
but they're active. That's what's really amazing. It's like,
Yeah, well,
And,
there's a shooting range here, so someone went there, and he said he was really impressed that he went to a very advanced course, and he said most people are 60s plus.
Yeah.
He's the youngest guy,
Wow.
and it's a very advanced. He went to a very difficult one.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it is. It's a unique town in that. It's a unique town in that sense. It's small. You have to know, like, you're moving to a small town,
Yeah.
and some people aren't good at that. Like, there are certain resources which aren't available.
Mhm.
They're just not.
Healthcare wise, I heard there's a little bit of a shortage, no? of
You have to ask
doc-
around, different opinions on that.
doctors,
Yeah,
or no?
yeah. I mean, it's not a mecca of healthcare.
Yeah.
A lot of people just go to Phoenix.
Okay.
If you want to, like, malls, stuff like that are in Phoenix.
Okay.
But
You can get most of your basic needs met here.
Gotcha.
But, sometimes specialties you have to go down to Phoenix.
well, like, department stores are mainly not really here.
Okay.
Um,
The property for that.
Well, if you wanna get in touch with an agent in Phoenix or up here, I have.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. We have ours in Phoenix, we have our one that we've already made contact through a friend of mine
Oh.
that moved there. But here, we would definitely
Yeah, I have
like
a
somebody.
good one here and my
Okay.
girlfriend, so she's got a really good.
Okay.
Both of them are correct.
Perfect, yeah, because that's why I look for agents, the only recommendation, you know?
all right, we got to start studying.
Okay, thank you guys.
Yeah, sure. So, it's
Very nice. Paul,
Good luck,
right?
Paul.
Paul, yes, and David.
Take care, David.
Yes.
You want them to say?
My wife and kids are waiting for us, and I have to write a lease actually myself right now.
How long are you in town for?
What's that?
How long are you in town for?
Till tomorrow. Yeah, we came for 4 days. We were here, got here Monday night and.
Well, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is doing, if my wife and kids go to, they might want to go to, we were supposed to be in Israel right now actually, but flight got canceled, but, they might be going in the summer for like 2 months. What I've started thinking to do is coming out here, renting something for a month and just kind of like,
checking it out.
just really feeling it, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, we'll be in touch.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, nice to meet you.
Nice to
All
meet
right,
you.
so today's
Yes.
chapter 11
Very
are the
nice
laws
to
of
meet you.
divorce.
You too.
You can take the keep if you'd like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Today's chapter 11, laws of divorce. Now, this is very interesting. It's finally a subject change. You cannot marry a girl who's under 12 years old. If you do marry her, though, so you're not meant to, but if you do marry her and she doesn't want to be married, she can back out of the marriage, and she doesn't need a divorce document, because when you betroth her, it's not a complete betrothal. You got that? Okay. So this is called miyun. Miyun is its own set of laws. It's in the laws of divorce. Miyun means that when a girl gets married when she's under 12 years old, like she's a minor, then once she's 12, she's no longer a minor in Jewish law, but under 12, she has the ability to refuse, to back out of the marriage and be like, hey, I was just a little girl, I didn't want to.
You mean after once the betrothal takes place?
It already took place, and now she's 12 years old, she could say, I'm out. So similarly, a young girl who marries, her father marries her off, and she becomes a widow or divorced when she's young, so she's like 8 years old, let's say, she is like a orphan because she's already married out. She's already married out. And if she got married when she's a child, she can refuse. So don't try and marry a young child, the Rambam says, but if you do, there is a betrothal. And you might need to get divorced if you want to back out, but she can back out without a divorce when she comes of age. A deaf mute, even though so now a deaf mute in Jewish law, which has changed actually, it's not that the law has changed, but the status of a deaf mute, there's a lot of advancements with deaf mutes. I mean, a lot of them can work and be in the workforce and drive cars and do all sorts of things with technology. But a deaf mute in those days was pretty out of things. So they can get married. They're like a child. However, they cannot back out. Like her, they would need a divorce. Go to mommy. Oh, okay. Great pants. These are size? These are the smaller ones? Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Now they made a rule. They don't want, now the rabbis wanted these deaf mutes. It's a good thing if they get married. So they said that she can't back out because they wanted people to marry her. So a mima enes, someone who refuses, is a young girl, whether from betrothal or marriage, whether in front of her husband and not in front of her husband. And just like she can refuse to marry the husband, she can also back out if she has a levirate marriage. and she can refuse this one and get married to someone else. We don't say, hey, you refuse, you're young, so you're not getting married at all. No, she can get married to someone else. Say, I just don't like this husband, and she could do this second, third. It doesn't matter how many, as
So-
long as she is a minor, she can back out.
Was that common back in the day?
No.
For women to say, I don't like this guy, I don't like
Well, it wasn't so common to get married to a really young girl who was a minor, who was younger than 12 years old. But if she does, she can back out. And someone who doesn't, even though she's married and she goes married to someone else, so now if she goes and betrothed to someone else, that is her way of refusing, because she doesn't need a divorce to back out like someone else. How
So-
long? Yeah.
The point of this would be, aside from the technical halakha, she can't be forced into a marriage that she doesn't want.
Well, we'll see. She can be, her dad can force her in, but she has a way of getting out. All right. How long can she refuse? So as long as she is a minor, until she becomes 12 years old, or until we know for sure she will not go through puberty. We said earlier, which is, okay. And when are we talking about that he didn't have relations with her after they got married? After she became 12. However, if that time came and they had relations, once she's has relations after she's 12, she can no longer back out, even if she didn't go through puberty. Okay. If they checked and they found she didn't go through any puberty, once they have relations after the proper time, we are worried maybe she did go through puberty and the hairs fell off, and therefore she would need a divorce document, out of doubt. And if she refuses after they check her and she gets married to someone else, she will need from him a divorce document. And if she gets married, she has to divorce both of them, and the baby will be a Suffolk mamzer, might be a bastard. Okay. A young girl that did not refuse, she got older, even though they didn't have relations when she reached 12, she can no longer refuse because she got older, and she needs a divorce document rabbinically. So biblically she's not fully married, but rabbinically she does. Because he didn't come to her after she well, we're not sure if she's fully married or not, but so first she needs to do it. And so she only needs a divorce from the young marriage, which is rabbinically. Therefore, if he gets married after she gets engaged to someone after she gets older, the second one, the second kedushin, the second betrothment does have an effect on her, and if she divorces the first one, she can get married to the second one. However, if the second one divorced her, she cannot get married to the first one again. So if she's married to the first one, then she gets betrothal after another guy, then she has to get divorced from the first one. And if the second one has relations with her, she has to divorce from both of them. She can't marry to both of them. And if she gets pregnant, the baby won't be a mamzer, because she can technically get married, betrothed to the second guy, and that's her refusal of being married to the first guy. And if the first one has relations with her before they get divorced, then the child will be a mamzer. How old do you need to be in order to refuse a marriage? From 6 years old until 10 years old, you check if she's smart enough. If she knows how to keep some money, then the betrothment money is betrothment. And she knows this is for marriage, then just like she can keep a food product, then she can refuse. If she doesn't know how to keep it, like, you give your kids Hanukkah money, gelt, and some of them put in their wallet, and some of them just leave it out. I gave out in events, and you leave after all the kids leave, and you see just money on the floor. In other words, a lot of them don't know how to keep the money. So if she doesn't need to, then it's as if she doesn't need to refuse officially. She could just leave. And younger than 6, even though she knows to, she doesn't need to refuse. And more than this, on 10, even if she's really foolish, she doesn't know how to keep money, she needs to do meyun. Now we're going to say, how does she actually do it? How does she actually do it? She says in front of 2 witnesses, I do not want so-and-so to be my husband. Or I do not want the money that, I do not want the kiddushin money, I do not want the betrothment money that my mother or my brother did. And even if there are guests in her house and she's serving them and she says, I don't want this person to be my husband. Now, clearly you do. You're living in his house. That counts as refusing. the two witnesses that see her refuse to be married, they write, on so and so day, this person refused to be married, and they sign it, and this is called a get miyun. This is a divorce document, so it's not as strict as a divorce document. It doesn't have to be written so carefully, and there's not all these laws and everything like that. It's really just a representation that the witnesses said that she doesn't want to be married to this person. Okay,
But there has to be
witnesses.
witnesses and a documentation.
Yes.
That she formally rejected.
Yeah, because she was living with somebody. Could be for years since she was very young. She was living with somebody, so they want to make sure that it's clear that she has backed out. Backed out from the marriage. Okay, two people that she does in front of them. They have to recognize her and her husband, and therefore anyone who sees her and they listen, they can write the document, even though she doesn't recognize them. Now, the thing is even though it's not an official document like a get, we do have an official language, but it's not as strict. This is what you write. On so and so this week and this day of the month, etc. This Shabbos, this week, on this date, this person, the daughter of this person, refused this person in front of us, and she says, now the daughter, you cannot go to a little girl and say, take this money to betroth me, right? That doesn't do anything, because if she's too young, she's not able to hold money. She's not able to receive until she's 12. But what you could do is so basically what you've done, what this person has done, he's gone to her mother or brother after the dad died, or so the dad can marry off his daughter. If he's dead, the mother or brother, the heirs, can do it. So he went to them and they got married. Now, why would they do that? Could be, the common case would likely be, so they do that. So they say this person married them off, and then, so the Rambam writes, this is the language of how you do it. If you divorce your wife and she gets married to someone else, even though they didn't have relations, she's forbidden to the first one. And if he takes him back, he gets lashes, and you force him to divorce her. If she's divorced, and then now here's the interesting thing: a guy divorces his wife, and then she has an affair with somebody. So she's not married, but you're not allowed to have affairs with people. You have to, if you want to get married, you can get married. You're not allowed to. So she has an affair with somebody. She can still marry the first husband, right? So we said yesterday that once she gets married to the second person, she can no longer marry the first husband. But if she has an affair if she has an affair while she's married, she has to divorce. She can never get married to the guy she had an affair with, and she has to divorce the first husband. But here, she had an affair with someone after she's divorced. She can return to her husband.
Why does having the affair change that ability for her to?
Well, what we're trying to clarify is a lady gets divorced from her husband, according to Jewish law, she can get remarried to him. But when she gets betrothed to somebody else, she can no longer get married to the first husband. It's forbidden.
Unless she has an affair with
No, she no longer can get married to the first husband. However, if she had an affair with somebody, which is wrong, but she's not married to him, then she can go back to the first husband.
Right, so my question is why is her having the affair being able to change that law?
Well, what we would have thought is, if she gets married, if someone gives her money and says, you're betrothed to me, she can't get married to the first husband. So maybe if she has relations with somebody, she can't get married either. So the Rambam is clarifying that if she has an affair with somebody, she could get married to the first husband.
Yeah, I just don't understand what the reason is.
Why could she?
Yeah, why after having the affair, she could go back?
Yeah, well, why not? Well,
But that's not the reason.
so in other
Why
words,
is that a reason?
only if she gets married to someone else, she can't go back to the first husband.
Right.
But if she has an affair, which is wrong, since she didn't get married to anyone else, she's allowed to get married to the first husband.
Right, but why is having the affair change the fact that she can then go back?
It doesn't change.
But she wasn't able to.
She was. If you divorce, you can remarry the same person.
Oh, I thought it said that if you.
So if you divorce, you can remarry the same person until you get married to somebody else.
Oh.
Once you get married, so let's say a lady gets married to one person, divorced. She gets married to another person, gets divorced. She can't go back to the first husband. But if she gets married to one guy, gets divorced, has an affair, she's not married,
Oh.
she's just fooling around, then she can go back to the first husband. That's what the
If
Rambam
she
says.
doesn't have an affair?
Then she can for sure go back. She for sure can go back.
I think,
Yeah, you're allowed to get married after you're divorced, the same person, You divorce somebody, you're allowed to get married to them until they get married to somebody else. And now what the Rambam is saying is you might think, well, she's not married, but she had an affair. Maybe she can't get married to the first person. So the Rambam is clarifying. After you divorce, you can get married to the same person until they get married, not if they have an affair, and not if they didn't have an affair, for sure you can get married. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, at the risk of delving into the inner recesses of your thinking, is kind of a frightening thought. David is asking,
We're going to say that now, but basically, A, if someone gets divorced, they can get remarried. B, they can only get remarried so as long as that girl did not get married, the wife did not get married to somebody else. So, the Rambam says, so, okay, if she didn't have an affair, if you divorce, you can go back. She has an affair, even then you can still go back. However, the Rambam says, if the lady has an affair while she is married, she is forbidden, she has to divorce her husband, and she cannot get married to the next
to the guy
she cheated with, unless he raped her. If she was forced, then she can stay married to her husband.
so if a woman is divorced, has an affair, she can marry the guy she had an
No, she could get married to him, yeah.
But
I
if
mean,
she hasn't, but if
she could
she's-
get married to. She could have gotten married to him. She chose to have an affair. But yeah, the only problem is when you have so you're not allowed to have an affair. You're not allowed to not get married to someone. But it's not as strict as if you're married. If you breach marriage, then you have to divorce your husband, and you can never get married to the other guy.
So if she's married and has the affair, then there are consequences to the affair.
I get that.
Yeah.
Have you got that?
I got
Okay,
that.
so now let's go. Therefore, any lady that is forbidden to her husband because he warns her, and he says, "I think you had I suspect you," they're not allowed to have relations. And if she so once she becomes forbidden to him, he cannot get married to her anymore. Yeah,
Are we in 14?
we're finishing on number 14.
So if, it's interesting, if she has an affair while married,
Yeah.
but then he gets lashes?
Yeah, he's not allowed to be married to her anymore.
Oh, so her indiscretion limits his ability to have a relationship with his wife.
Correct. That is correct. Marriage is
though
a two-way. Marriage is a two. Yes, correct.
He did nothing wrong.
Well, we're assuming that he knows, right? If he does not know that she has an affair with somebody, then he wouldn't. But he knows, and
So the hypothetical would be.
so now he's not allowed to be married to her anymore. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, you do unfortunately have cases. I mean, this is uncommon, but you do have cases where the wife accidentally, or whatever, she cheats on her husband, and then she wants to make it all well, but she can't. They have to divorce.
So she has an affair. He doesn't know, but afterward, like a month after the affair, she breaks it off and then says to her husband, I had an affair with so-and-so. He's forbidden to her.
Well, if this is complicated. If she says it, we don't believe her. If a lady says I have an affair, we don't. If a lady says I had an affair, we don't believe her. If he knows from somebody else saw or said or whatever it is, now. Then, and we'll say more details about it, truthfully later. But correct. If she says it, okay. So now let's see. Now,
He's playing games with you.
all right, let's stop here. Let's do Tanya. Well, yeah, it's an interesting thing. The Rambam will say later that the rabbi said that a lot of times you might have a woman who is unclear. You might have a woman who's unclear with her spouse. So she wants to get divorced, but she doesn't want to get divorced. Get divorced is like, the husband will have a hard time, whatever. She really wants to get divorced, but she doesn't want to be clear with him. So she might say like, oh, I cheated on you. right? Oh, I have to divorce you. She loses her ketubah. She doesn't get any alimony, but you know, she doesn't like the marriage. She wants out. So the rabbi said, when a lady says I had an affair, we don't believe her, because there's, I guess, many times in history where the lady was not telling the truth. So, but if there are other witnesses or other means of knowledge, or if, let's say, the guy she had an affair with says it, then we could believe him. Yeah, so, it is unfortunate because these things do happen in the world. And, I wanted to say, like, in our society, it's not even, like, considered that bad. Like, it's like, if marriage is about love and you're not religious and whatever it is, and whatever, we're not in love anymore. We separated, we separated. And then, no, now let's try and get back together. And it's like, oh, sorry, you were separated, you were living with somebody else, like, you can't get married anymore. So that does happen sometimes.
So a couple questions. One question. These laws that he's documenting are Talmudic, right?
Yeah. No, they're biblical and Talmudic, yeah.
But this level of detail, like a minor child and
Yeah.
so forth, is that in the Torah?
Yes, but everything in the Torah is encrypted. You have to.
It's indirect.
Everything. Well, 90% of the Torah is indirect. Everything's encrypted in the way it's phrased and everything, and that's the Talmud. They dig out these laws.
Well, yeah, you can say ultimately everything is from the Torah.
Yeah,
but
correct.
I'm
Correct. If you read the Bible, I don't know if you'll get it, but like, if you just read the Bible, you're not going to get most of it.
It's not written in the same way the Ten Commandments are written.
It is. It is. Yeah, and on the contrary, the Ten Commandments are extremely encrypted. There's tons of laws in the Ten Commandments, right?
You know what I'm asking.
Well, so what I'm trying to say is the Ten Commandments have thousands of details in them, which are, now what's the Talmud doing? They're taking each verse, analyzing, why is this phrase before that? Why is this said before this? So is it in the Torah? These are all biblical laws. Biblically, a man has to, if his wife has an affair, then he has to divorce her. And that's very clear in the Bible. And then all the details, many of these details are biblical, many are rabbinic. So I'm not sure. Are you trying to ask, like, is it clear if you read a King James Bible?
No, that's not what I'm asking. If I mean, you've studied the Shas, we have not. So if I open the Talmud, I'll find a discussion of these details.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Yes, correct. They are clarified in the Talmud, but if you look at the Rambam, actually, he quotes a couple of verses today. Some of them are quite clear in
There will be a verse in the Torah
yeah, well,
that gives rise to the...
some of these laws are quite clear in the Torah. Like, in other words, the fact that she has to leave her husband, that's super clear in the Torah. Like,
So, I mean, in the Ten Commandments it says, thou shalt not kill.
thou shalt not murder.
Murder.
Right?
That's-
And then,
right.
well,
That's a very straightforward declarative.
well, let's say in the Ten Commandments it says, thou shalt not steal. And Rashi says, that's talking about kidnapping. Right? So, thou shalt not steal is not in the Ten Commandments. And thou shalt not steal is elsewhere in the Torah. It's also a mitzvah, but in the Ten Commandments, it's talking about kidnapping. A lot of these laws are very clear in the Torah. It says, do not commit adultery in the Ten Commandments. And then later on, it says that you have to send your wife away if she commits adultery.
Okay, my question is superficial question. There will be a Mishnah in the Talmud related to this topic.
Yeah.
And then will be a rabbinic discussion back and forth.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, correct. Well, so like, let's say some you can sense the rabbinic discussion more, like miyun, the refusal is like a rabbinic thing. Biblically, if a lady is caught cheating with witnesses, then she's worthy of the death penalty. The husband is
And that's Torah law.
That's Torah law. And the guy she cheated with is also worthy of the death penalty. Now, the thing is, to actually give the death penalty, you would need some pretty serious witnesses, which would be very difficult. It would be very rare to have witnesses when people are doing something in private. But you could have witnesses, if she admits it, or there's no witnesses, he admits it, then there's no death penalty. However, she'll be forbidden to her husband, and he's not allowed to marry her, and she's forbidden to her cheat. So now, it's a really interesting thing, but you will sometimes have someone has an affair, and then suddenly get divorced, and they marry the guy they had an affair with. And they're good people, and they come to shul, like they're good people. In other words, like you don't sense, whatever, she wasn't in love with her first husband, and she's in love with this guy. But it poses a problem because she didn't get divorced and remarried. It poses a very deep halachic problem that she's forbidden to the second guy that she's in love with. So that does happen sometimes. Even someone in Prescott, um, but yeah, that happens sometimes, and that's something which socially, politically, we don't seem to care when politicians do it so much, and in today's society, where it's something where people don't think it's so wrong in today's society, but halachically in the Torah, you run into a lot of problems with that. So
It's so interesting that this is written 1,000 years ago, and marital relations were just as complicated then
Yeah.
as they are now.
I
So-
can honestly say that men still don't understand women after 1,000 years.
yeah,
So-
and they won't in 1,000.
So Ecclesiastes was right. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Well, so it is very interesting when sometimes you'll have a really great couple or a really great thing, and they become religious, and then they realize that they can't actually live together because they. Well, the way now sometimes there's loopholes, and there's sometimes.
So would the community behave differently if they were aware that so-and-so was married, had an affair, extramarital affair, divorced the husband, and then married the person with whom she had an affair? Now, this was known, I mean,
Not well. I don't know. Like it's hard to imagine it being. Well, there's like tons of different cases, tons of different scenarios. Like nowadays, you might be able to say like, well, they weren't halachically married in the first place, and according to this, according to that. There's those details.
and if she didn't get a get, let's say there was a whatever era they were living in, there was a mechanism for a civil divorce, but didn't have a halakhic get and remarried.
Yeah.
Outside of the problem of the moms, or let's say if they didn't have children, the second marriage, it's still a problem, right?
Yeah.
Halakhically.
Yeah.
And that's Torah law, right?
Yes. Like there's sometimes that there's just nothing you could do to fix it, and that's what the Torah says in these cases.
Okay.
All right, let's do some Tanya.
Thank
Okay, so we asked the question at the beginning of the Tanya. We said that in one place in the Gemara, it says that before a person is born, they make his soul swear, I will be a tzaddik, I'll be a tzaddik, and I won't be wicked. So number one, I'll be righteous and I won't be wicked. So that's 2 points. And even if the whole world says I'm righteous, I will view myself as wicked. And we said in the Mishnah, one of the ways of explaining the Mishnah of us, it says, do not be wicked in your own eyes. And we also kind of asked, we said, well, if you're wicked in your eyes, you'll be depressed. And you can't be depressed. Judaism, you have to be happy. And if you are not, if you look at yourself as always righteous, well, then you'll also make mistakes. You'll always be self-righteous. So those are the questions the Alter Rebbe starts the Tanya with, and now we're going to go into a bunch of different subjects.
Before you do that, if a person, say an older person, is reflecting on his life and he's aware that in his younger years he did some things that were not admirable, let's say, is the Alter Rebbe here telling us how we should think about those things?
He will in a while, but at this point he's just asking the questions. In other words, at this point we're in the question, but he will in a long time. Okay. So we find in the Talmud, in the Gemara, there are 5 types of people. Now, in the Gemara, there's kind of simple meaning what these mean. So we'll see. So generally you have tzaddik, rasha, and beinoni. Tzaddik is someone who's righteous. A rasha is someone who's wicked. And then there's the in-between, which is the beinoni. However, the Gemara says there's actually 5. There's tzaddik v'toiv loy, a tzaddik, and even though we can really dwell on this for a long time, I want to go through it kind of fast. You have a tzaddik who has good, a tzaddik v'raloi, and you have a tzaddik who has bad. Assumingly the tzaddik, the righteous person who has good, is not struggling at all. Then you have a righteous person who struggles. You have a rasha v'tovlo, a wicked person who has a good life. And then you have a rasha v'ralo, you have a wicked person who has a bad life, struggling. And you have a middle guy. The Gemara continues, and it says, tzaddik v'toiv loy, tzaddik gomer. It's not just you have a tzaddik who struggles and a tzaddik who doesn't struggle, tzaddik who has good and tzaddik who doesn't have good. A tzaddik who has good is a tzaddik gomer. He is a complete tzaddik. That's what the Gemara explains. Now,
a tzaddik who has good is meaning of a tzaddik who has no bad.
On a tzaddik viraloi is a tzaddik who is not complete. So actually, in the Gemara there, it's saying you have a tzaddik who has a good life physically, he's not struggling. The reason why he has a good life is he's complete. And then you have a tzaddik viraloi. The reason why he doesn't is because he's not a complete tzaddik, right? So that's what. Then you also have a wicked person who has good in his life because he's not completely wicked. And then you have a wicked person who has no good in his life, he's completely wicked. That's what the Gemara explains. So the Gemara says, in other words, the reason why a tzaddik might have good and a rasha might have bad, and a rasha might have good and a tzaddik might have bad, is because they're not completely wicked or not completely righteous. But there is somebody who is completely righteous, so everything is good for him. All right. Now, over Raya Mehemna, so Raya Mehemna is a book of the Zohar, and Raya Mehemna means the faithful shepherd. Who's the author of Raya Mehemna? Well, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai went to heaven, and he learned things from Moses. So Raya Mehemna is teachings from Moses. Moses' soul.
Really?
Raya Mehemna, Pirush Parshas Mishpatim. Pirush Tzadik V'Ralei Shara Shaboy Kafif L'Tayf. Now in Raya Mehemna, in this book of Zohar, which is authored by Moses, it says, what is a tzaddik v'raloi? So we said now a tzaddik who has bad is somebody a righteous person who has a struggling life, has hardship in his life. Right? That's what we said. That's what we said in the Gemara. So in the Raya Mehemna, it says that the Ra is not referring to what he has in his life. The Ra is actually referring to him. The tzaddik v'raloi, the tzaddik who was bad, the Rash yesh by kafaf l'tayv. The Ra, he has evil inside of him. There's a righteous person who has evil, but the evil is bent over. I'm going to translate it literally. Bent over to good. And then there's a tzaddik who has no bad at all. But toivloi, he doesn't have any evil at all. So now, comes out, you have a tzaddik v'raloi is a tzaddik who's not complete, and a tzaddik v'toivloi is a tzaddik who is complete. You have a rasha v'toivloi is a rasha that's not complete, and then you have rasha v'toivloi who's a complete, rasha v'raloi who's a complete rasha. So you have a righteous person, this sounds kind of confusing, but we'll simplify it. You have a righteous person who has a little bit of evil in him, he's not perfectly righteous, and you have a righteous person who's completely righteous. You have a wicked person who's completely evil, and then you have a wicked person who's not completely evil. He has a little bit of good of him.
So what's the fifth one?
And then a Beinoni is the middle one. We'll talk about that. Uba Gemara, Seif Perek Tes the Braches, and elsewhere in the Gemara it says, Tzadikim Yitzer Toiv Sheiftan. It says, who is their judge by righteous people? Who tells them what to do, who they follow? The good inclination. Or Shayim Yitzhahara Shaiftan, wicked people, who makes their calls? Their evil inclination makes their calls. That's the difference between a tzaddik and rasha. Beinanim, a middle person, Zev is a Shaiftan, they have two voices who are judging, they're making their calls. So a righteous person, only his good voice, righteous voice, makes their calls. A wicked person, only his Yitzhahara makes their calls. A Beinanim, both of them makes their calls. Amar Rabba, so the Gemara says, Rabba was a great rabbi in the Amora period, after a couple hundred years after the temple's destruction. He said, Kagoin ana Beinoni. You want to know what a Beinoni is? In between guy is? I'm a Beinoni. Amar Abaye, Abaya tells him, Leishavik Mar Chayil Choberia. He says, if you are a Beinoni, his rabbi says, I'm a middle guy. I'm not righteous. I'm a middle guy. So his student tells him, he says, if you're a Beinoni, then the world can't exist. Now, simply speaking, in the Gemara, it explains that the world exists in the merit of the righteous. There's always a few super righteous people in the world. So Abaya is telling him, he's saying, if you are not righteous, how can the world spin? If you're just a Beinoni. Okay. Uvelhavin Kol Zeh Be'er we want to understand all this. What are these 5 levels fully? What is Rabbah seems to say it's okay to be a Beinoni, and Abaya says, no, you're not. They're having a dispute, right? One of them says you're a Beinoni, one of them says I'm a Beinoni, another one says, no, you're righteous. What are they arguing? Gam Lahavin, we're also going to understand Masha Amar Iyov. So Job says, Rabbeinu Shalaylam, Barasa Tzadikim Rasar Shayim. So he says, Job is saying, God, you don't really give us that much choice. You create righteous and you create evil people, right? And that's why, now, right? So Job says that God created people righteous and he created people evil. So you don't really have a choice if you're righteous and evil, right? Well, in the Gemara that we read, one of the things it says before someone is born, the angel says, this one will be strong, this one will be weak, this one will be smart, this one will be foolish, this one will be wealthy, this one will be poor, right? He says on each kid, before you're born, tons of stuff is predetermined. What property you own, who you'll marry, it's all predetermined. But the Gemara says, why doesn't the angel say you'll be righteous and you'll be evil? Because righteous and evil is up to you. Who you marry, so how does it work? How does that work with Job? Job says you create people righteous, you create people evil. But in the Talmud it says the angel, before you're born, he says everything that's going to happen to you. You're going to be wealthy, you're going to be poor, you're going to be strong, weak, foolish, smart, Torah scholar, whatever it is. But righteous and wicked, he doesn't say that's your choice. So how does that work that's a contradiction, right? That's a contradiction with Job.
Will question.
Yeah, it's a free will question. We also have to understand what's a Beinoni. A Beinoni cannot be someone who has, look, I do the wrong thing sometimes, but I do the right thing also. That can't be a Beinoni. Why? We know that we know in the Gemara that Rabbah, the Gemara says couldn't kill him, couldn't let him die, couldn't expire, because he was studying Torah so diligently he wasn't able to do it. So now here we have this guy Rabbah, who the angel of death can't stop, until eventually there's a distraction and he died, right? The angel of death can't stop. And he says, I'm a Beinoni. Now a Beinoni means a regular intermediate guy. So simply speaking, a righteous person has more mitzvahs than sins. A wicked person has more sins than mitzvahs. More bad than good. And then in between guys, 50-50, average Joe. How could Rabbah make a mistake and say, I'm an average guy?
Even though he's a tzaddik.
If the angel of death couldn't kill him, because he was always studying Torah, the angel of death could find nothing to kill him with. How could Rabbah make this mistake? Another thing about the Beinoni. So number one about the Beinoni, we can't say a Beinoni, like simple thinking, by the way, in the Talmud, and we'll talk about where later, but simple things in the Talmud, a Beinoni is someone who's 50-50. When a guy does a sin, he's called wicked. We know elsewhere in the Talmud that when you do a sin, you are called wicked. And if you do tshuva, you are called righteous. Right? Where do we know that? If a guy betroths a lady, we said in the Rambam, on condition that I'm wicked, or condition that I am righteous, he's married. Why? How do you know we're righteous? How do you know you're wicked? Well, we don't know. But if you're thinking a negative thought of idolatry, or while you're doing that, you become wicked, even though you did everything properly in your whole life. If you think a bad thought of a sin, you're wicked. So therefore you're betrothed. And if you think a thought of repentance, you're righteous. So it can't just be that you're holding sins. How many sins do you have? Can't be that that matters so much. Even somebody who breaks a small rabbinic decree. Even if you break a small rabbinic decree, you're called wicked, right? So it can't be that like, hey, I make mistakes, but I'm usually pretty good. We know that you're called a rasha, wicked, even if you do a small sin, right?
Yeah.
So how could so a Beinoni can't be someone who's 50-50 because a wicked person, if he is perfect his whole life, he does a small rabbinic sin, that's called a rasha in Jewish law. And even in the Gemara elsewhere, it says that if you see someone else sinning and you don't try and stop it, you're also called wicked, right? So you didn't even sin; someone else sinned. You just didn't do the mitzvah of rebuking him. You're also called wicked. So we cannot say we must say a Beinoni doesn't sin at all, right? Because a wicked person only needs to do one sin. So we'll stop here.
But that would seem to say there's no distinction between a Beinoni and
yeah,
a
so we have to understand what a Beinoni is. So the Alter Rebbe here, I'll just give a spoiler, but he's going to say there's a context of Beinoni in Russia when you're judged and when you die. There's a context in, sometimes someone could say, hey, the rabbinical court said, hey, we saw you did the sin. And you say, well, I didn't do it, I didn't mean it, you didn't actually see the witness that you're right. You still did the sin, right? Whether they can prove it or not. So there's a certain context of Russia and Beinoni and stuff like that, which is 50-50 how you're judged on Judgment Day. But what we're ultimately going to say is that a wicked person is someone who does sin sometimes, and a Beinoni is someone who doesn't do sin. So what is a Beinoni? So to deliver for the next many chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to delve into personalities. And ultimately we're going to explain that there are people who are prone to be wicked, and they never sin. There are people who are prone to be wicked and sometimes sin, and we're going to talk about those things. And yes, the Alter Rebbe is actually kind of totally going to release. Ultimately, he's going to say that it's very difficult to think about yourself because it's we're imperfect. Yeah.
Can you give me an example